objective is to provide people with the most amount of knowledge, because you can take all this stuff till the sun comes up and goes down. If you don't have the nutrition base right, and you don't have the know what product right is for you, or you, or you, or you, then it's going to be an irrelevant situation. So I would say, if you guys want to ask me questions, that's probably the best way for me to help you guys the most.
Could you go over, say, sorry, could you go over, like, a lot of people are, you hear things, you know, well, a calorie is a calorie.
Okay?
Which,
Not true, but yes.
exactly.
Okay.
So, just maybe go over that about the actual intake, you know?
Sure.
Somebody talking about, you know, I need 2,000 calories a day. Well, that doesn't mean you can eat ice cream for breakfast or mayonnaise for lunch.
Okay.
Calories, maybe something about that and how that affects whether I want to bulk up, slim down, or you know, the kind of the broad spectrum of the nutritional part.
Okay. I'm going to touch on that question in a couple different parts, okay? All right, there's an Atkins theory where you put your body in ketosis. I'm not a huge fan of that. There's another thing, especially when you're out in the hot sun, running, you're burning calories, but they're glycogen calories, they're basically carbohydrate calories. Your body will run on ketones, but not as efficiently. So I'm a big believer in healthy fatty acids, but I'm not a big believer in taking my, majority of my calories from fats and proteins, and then just a small amount of carbs. To touch on the second part of that, where a calorie comes from is the most important part of that question. A calorie, you have fat and carb calories and protein calories. A carb calorie and a protein calorie are 4 calories per 1 gram. Okay, a fat calorie is 9. So obviously the body is going to have it's going to take longer for the body to burn a fat calorie than it is a carbohydrate calorie. Now you could break that down into an essential fatty acid scenario where your body metabolizes at 99.9%, give or take, efficiency rate. You're going to utilize those calories pretty much almost all of them. Now, if you take bacon or something like that, that fat calorie is not going to be utilized as efficiently. I think for people that are, depending on, again, this goes back to individual body-wise, but in general, if the carb, protein, moderate fats from good sources seems to be the best overall method that I've seen in my experience. So does that kind of answer that? Is there? Yeah, the trans fatty acid would be the part of that would be, because it's not a very efficiently metabolized fatty acid. The carb component, it's dipped in grease, obviously. Now you got a fat and a carb component together. Perfect world would be, having a higher carbohydrate type thing, and then have I like a 1-to-1 type of thing. These type of guys, especially the younger ones, if you're trying to grow, a 2-to-1 ratio of carb to protein is probably going to be about in a general term, way to go. And the best way to calculate that is if you want a simplistic way of doing it, is to take your body weight in a growing, between 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. Multiply that and then divide it out by the number of meals you're eating. Now, if you're eating 3 meals, you obviously don't want to try to shove 100 grams of protein and 100 grams of carbs into 3 meals, because your body just metabolistically won't do it. So you want to space those meals apart. But that would be the perfect world in as far as proteins and carbs, and then have your fats come from the natural fats in the meat, and then a good essential fatty acid as a supplement, in my opinion, especially if you use protein shakes, like at night before bed. A little flax oil or DHA oil, which is straight fish oil, is a great nighttime going to bed on thing, because the fats slow the digestion of everything down. Proteins and carbs kind of do their own thing. They're very synergistic carbs. Proteins as your body breaks it down and shuttles into the intestines, the amino acids, the proteins are now broken down into amino acids. A protein is a peptide bonded chain of amino acids, so you would have a long chain of different amino acids. And a carbohydrate will help deliver that into the bloodstream.
Gears, can you talk a little bit about all the different like workout, the Xenadrine, the hydroxy cuts, the RIP fuel, because there hasn't really been any long-term research to show they just can't be that good for you. And maybe they are, maybe they're not. There hasn't been. I heard a report recently that one of them leads to.
All right, let me ask you this question: do you want the media version or do you want the real version?
The real.
The reason I say it is because if you look at the way the pharmaceutical companies, in 1932, I think it was, all herbs, all vitamins, all of it was controlled under the pharmaceutical companies. There was no money to be made in it. They didn't want it no more. So they let it go to the free market. That's where we are today. Now, in the case of like hydroxycut, the new, the hardcore, that's the most recent one that I think that maybe you're probably talking about as far as the report goes. They don't tell, if you look deeper, they'll tell you more of the other things that the person that was taking that product was using. So it's like when you scratch and sniff, it's not quite as, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
Now, going back a little bit farther, even with ephedra, okay? Ephedra, like the baseball player that died back in whatever, 2000 or whatever, or 2003, there's been about, I think, 2 to 3 deaths accounted for since like 91 or 2 when ephedra really hit the market, that they could even contribute to ephedra. The baseball player's ephedra was actually in his stomach, or the product, or the Xenadrine was actually in his stomach. So there's no real way that could have been the cause of death because it never was even in his bloodstream yet. It's, it wasn't even broken down when they did the autopsy on it. So there's stuff that when you read about it, everything like that, I say look at it, but then also find somebody that's knowledgeable, or look deeper, because it's not, some are crap, straight up, but some aren't. And like with ephedra, where it's been banned, overturned, banned, overturned. Well, the reason that is because there's no real proof of anything that ephedra is bad. Then when you look at the newer fat burners, most of them are based off synephrine. Synephrine is an ephedra alkaloid. The difference is the receptor site it works on. So, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, do I take 25 milligrams of this, or do I take 500 of this to get the same effect? So it's kind of a, when you really look at it, it's not cut and dry, in my opinion, on that. Trial and error, because that's the best way to know. If you take that product and combine it with any NO, not just necessarily NO Explode, but any NO product, it's like supercharged. Because that carbohydrate is then shuttling everything else that's in that with it faster into the bloodstream, hits you harder, faster. There's starchy carbs, obviously, and there's fibrous carbs. Fibrous are more your vegetables and whatnot. Starchy carbs can run from a higher glycemic to a low glycemic. So, for instance, a sweet potato versus a white potato. Sweet potato is a much more lower, white potato is, much higher. Even though the sweet potato is a little bit natural sugar, but it's very efficiently utilized. You want to have a starchy carb, white rice, brown rice, potatoes, things like that, pretty much are the basic type stuff. In a carbohydrate setting, I would say if it's fried carbohydrate, then chances are it's going to have other stuff to it. It's not just a straight carbohydrate anymore. In the protein realm, stick to the basics. Your chickens, your eggs, your obviously no pork, but fish, meat, protein powders, things like that. I mean, your basics.